Welcome to This Week in Design. We have to talk about the biggest news in design. We have to talk about liquid glass.
We challenged ourselves to make something purely digital feel natural and alive, from how it looks to how it feels as it dynamically responds to touch. To achieve this, we began by rethinking the fundamental elements that make up our software. And it starts with an entirely new expressive material we call liquid glass.
So in my last video, I talked about blurring in interface design and shared a documentary by Studio Dilo about that exact topic. And this week, Apple has actually taken it a step further. With the release of iOS 26, we did skip some numbers here. They have released a new UI paradigm called liquid glass. Shifting away from flat design, liquid glass actually embraces the materialness of the UI and takes this not only to the visual level, but also to the interactive and to the animated level. And don't be fooled, it's more than just a blur effect. Liquid glass actually refracts and acts like a proper material. If you look at the edges and the bezel and the bevel of the glass interfaces, they do behave like proper glass. In their marketing video, Apple even used some real-life glass objects to emphasize the materialness and emphasize the reference they have been using. And what can I say? It looks phenomenal. It looks organic, it looks very detailed, very logical. And even the animations have this little plasma-like stretch, almost like a cheese pull, or I have no words on how to describe it. It just looks cool. Which bears the question, why? Why hasn't it been done before? Why hasn't it been always like this? And the answer sadly is that because it's very hard to pull off, and even Apple can't do it properly, unfortunately. First, it's very, very heavy on the GPU. So glass-like effects, we have seen that before, right? But not in real-time interfaces. We've seen that in movies, in special effects videos. But seeing this rendered live at 90 Hertz or 120 Hertz on your screen is something that is very, very hardware intense. And that with no doubt the latest Apple hardware can do properly. But what about older devices? Apple has a track record of releasing new features which are almost unusable on older devices. So let's see how liquid glass turns out on that older iPhone. The second issue that Apple has with liquid glass is that the calculation between foreground and background has to be on point. In order to achieve proper contrast, so to have text readable on a background, you need to actually calculate what is on the background and what color do I need to choose for the foreground. So the simple decision of should the text be black or white actually goes a long way. And this is super tricky for text that moves, like in notifications or with noisy backgrounds that have a lot going on. Ioana Teleanu from UX Goodies has shared a couple of fails on her Instagram, and as usual I will put all these links in the description, so make sure to check them out. So she has posted a couple of fails that we've seen, especially with contrast, which of course is a huge issue for accessibility. Speaking of accessibility, and this is point number 3 that might become an issue, the idea of replacing fixed interface elements, so interface navigation bars, address bars, all these things with floating elements might become an issue when you have something interactive behind the element. Imagine having a browser with a floating toolbar and something like a pop-up or a cookie consent banner that you have behind said floating toolbar. So it will become very, very hard to tap the button that might be hidden by the toolbar if the toolbar has no mechanic to move away properly, especially if said consent banner is fixed or sticky in its position. I hope that Apple has actually accounted for that. So let's see how that turns out. Figma had a similar experience with their UI 3 with their floating window elements, which then they eventually reverted for a couple of reasons, and I hope that Liquid Glass doesn't have the same fate. So let's see how it turned out in practice, and let's see how they will actually fix up all the tiny bugs that Liquid Glass still has in their public beta, and how Liquid Glass will evolve into the new standard for Apple products. Speaking of standards, Apple has announced the winners of the 2025 Apple Design Awards.
Are you ready, set, go?
And as usual, there are some really cool games, some really cool apps, and especially indie developers in that category. So it's definitely worth checking out not only the winners, but also the nominees. This year there were also two favorites of mine nominated. One, Oliver Reichenstein with the IA Writer, a tool that I have been using for years now to write scripts like these or my own blog posts. And Play. Play is a wonderful app that lets you design and create and actually build digital products, apps on your mobile devices, almost like Framer for apps. So a really cool tool that still is flying somewhat under the radar, so it's definitely worth checking out. What's also worth checking out is Things with 2 I's. Things is a collection of AI generated icons and illustrations that are completely free to use. For an AI generated collection, the consistency is surprisingly on point. So if you like that style, then definitely check out Things. Personally, I'm a huge fan of that infinite canvas scroll where you can browse and discover illustrations and icons, but you can also use a search or a filter tool to find the icon that you need. And of course, because Things is AI generated and still a growing collection, and of course you can request icons that you need, and then they might eventually be added to the collection. Speaking of AI, last week we have been looking at the Wall Street Journal and what they have been doing with Runway and Veo to create like a short film. And this week, director and filmmaker Max Joseph has released his take on AI generated videos. You might know Max Joseph from movies like We Are Your Friends, or one of his many documentaries which you can watch on YouTube, or simply from his appearances in Casey Neistat videos. So Max Joseph is a very experienced filmmaker, and you can see that in his video. It's a music video for the song A Certain Romance by the Arctic Monkeys. Quite an oldie, but a great song. Max has managed to capture the essence of the song and create a fast-paced, really cool looking, really vibey music video that is a lot of fun to watch. And to be honest, that doesn't feel like AI from the get-go, but it still looks really good. So make sure to check out the video. It's in the description, of course, like all the links I am mentioning today. And let me know in the comments, how do you like the music video? What's your favorite AI video so far, or do you despise them all? I will see you in the next one. I hope you liked this video. If you haven't done so, please make sure to subscribe, and I will see you next week with This Week in Design. Bye.